Hello YouTube. So today I'm going to talk about a bit about Atlantis, and specifically something I found yesterday, I think, or perhaps the day before, when I got a YouTube recommendation that said Atlas was the king of Mauritania. Now I looked this up, checked it out, and nobody's disputing it. The first king of Mauritania was called Atlas. Atlas, A-T-L-A-S, the exact same spelling as the Atlas the Titan from Greece. Now Atlas, for people who don't know, he was a Titan, which is essentially an old god according to Greek mythology, and he had to hold the earth on his shoulders. That was sort of his job, if you like. They was really, really big. And as far as Atlantis is concerned, he created mountains behind Atlantis. In fact, Atlantis was named after him, Atlantis. And as many people know, so that's Greece. And Greece and Mauritania are a long way away from each other. Mauritania is North Africa, and Greece, of course, is Western Europe, kind of southwestern. I mean, I suppose they're not that far away from each other, but they're still a distance away. They're not the same people. They didn't have a lot to do with each other. I mean, obviously, Greece conquered much of the world, including North Africa, and so they would have conquered Mauritania. But certainly, the idea that Mauritania would have a Greek god as their king is a little bit strange. And so that was their first king. And it's just such a strange thing to me. It's like there's no disputing that that was the name they gave to their first king. He's written there, there's a biography about him. There's a lot known about this King Atlas. So much so that on Wikipedia they say King Atlas, first king of Mauritania, as opposed to Atlas the Titan. And he wasn't named after Atlas the Titan, he just happened to have that name. And of course we get Atlas, map of the world, Atlas is from him. Well, from the god, from the Titan, not from the... And Titans are a kind of god, they're old gods if you like. In Greek beliefs, the new gods and the old gods had a war, and the new gods won. That's why today, inverted commas, we worship new gods. And the idea of new gods and old gods having a war is prevalent in a number of religions. Greeks are unusual in having an actual war between them, and worshipping both in a sense. I mean, most old gods are things like, fairies, gnomes, elves, dwarves, all those sorts of magical creatures and magical things. A druid would be worshipping old gods. Of course, in some cultures, they kind of worship old gods and new at the same time. But anyway, so Atlas was essentially an old god, a Titan. And that's kind of the Greek version of the old gods. A lot of people would say, well, all old gods all around the world are the same gods, and all new gods all around the world are the same gods. And that's sort of, you can see a lot of similarities. And if you look at Christianity and Islam, and you see so many similarities, but of course that's fairly obvious because they're both based on Judaism, so they should have the same sort of things. Well, you ask a lot of Christians and they believe that Islam is the epitome of evil. Don't seem to understand that Allah is the same God that the Christians worship and the same God that the Jews worship. But even if you look at Hinduism or Buddhism or one of the other religions, they're still new gods as well. And even the gods of the ancient Greeks were new gods. They weren't old gods. They're beings of energy as opposed to great big creatures. Anyway, so I found it really interesting to note that Atlas was the name of a king. It's not a disputed name, it's not one of these ones where they go, well, that's a myth. Atlantis is supposedly a myth. So let's run this through again. So Atlas the Titan was made up, right? It was just an invention by the Greeks to push their religion and whatever. The war between the Titans and the and the Greek gods was a myth, meant to be teaching a lesson. Atlantis was a myth, never really existed. And if it did, it's somewhere off in the middle of nowhere. And yet we have very precise instructions, certainly for the time, for what Atlantis was. And then there's a King Atlas. Now, I didn't even know about this King Atlas. Perhaps you say, well, you should have known. Well, I didn't. And this is the thing, like, you look at it and you're going, well, you know, and somebody just casually put in a comment. Nobody even noticed it. He just said, oh, well, maybe because Atlas was the first king of Mauritania. It wasn't highlighted. There's no newspaper reports about it. It's just one of many things that you can focus on. And you're not manipulating things. I know a lot of people, they twist things, they turn things, and they try to make something sound like something else. But that's not what you're doing here. This is something really obvious. That Atlantis was a real place, and we know where it is. Now, we could easily go there. We could dig it up and try to work out what happened. Yes, we've guessed that the Great Flood, or the Younger Dryas from 12,600 years ago, roughly, that wiped out Atlantis. But working out precisely what that meant, was it literally a day and a night, or was it actually over the course of 100 years or even 5 years? We don't know those specifics. We don't know precisely what happened. Was their technology as great as all the myths say, or were they just reasonably powerful? Were they just a little bit better than Egypt, or a little bit better than China? Or were they not even as good as them? Or were they way ahead? Way ahead. Were they as good as we are now? Well, some people say the Egyptians were better than we are now. And if Atlantis was ahead of the Egyptians, how good was Atlantis? Even Punt was said to be ahead of Egypt. In fact, Egypt, who many people say more advanced than we are today, was only the third strongest kingdom in the region, behind Punt and Atlantis. And nobody's disputing where Punt is. Well, nobody's disputing that it existed. It's a little bit of a dispute whether it was Ethiopia or Somalia, but officially it's Somalia. But Punt was ahead of Egypt. Not much. And later on Egypt pushed ahead of Punt. But Atlantis was ahead of Punt. And we've got all about Egypt, wonderful pyramids that they built, or perhaps that the Puntites or the Atlanteans or someone else built. But either way, they've got these wonderful things. They've got all sorts of other wonderful things as well. We can't build the pyramids today. Even with our current technology, we just can't do it. We can build pyramids, but we can't build them as good as those ones were. And I mean, we can build them as well as the ones in Mexico, the Aztec ones. We can build them today. I mean, people say, well, there's proto-pyramids, there's these ones that are not quite as good. Yeah, but we can't build the good ones. We can't build the Giza ones, and that's kind of what we mean with it. It's almost like reverse engineered. They were there, and then we tried to replicate them. We tried our best, but we couldn't quite get there. Whatever the situation is there, it's just bizarre that there are still people around denying that is Atlantis. And the main denial is because it's too high up. I mean, it's quite high. I can't remember how many metres above the earth, but sea level, and it's also a distance from the sea. But if you're talking about the cataclysm that was the Great Flood, that was the Younger Dryas, that in itself could have made something close to that bigger difference. From being next to the sea to suddenly being, I think it's 500 kilometres away from the sea and 100 metres into the air. And that could happen really quickly if you're having an event as big as we know that the Younger Dryas was. That could happen very quickly in the space of a few years. And it's not just a few years that we've got to wait. We're talking about 12,500 years. Easily enough time for such changes to occur. I mean, we've seen changes in our own lifetime and without cataclysms. And, we've seen mountains get taller and others get shorter. We've seen continents drift. We've seen changes in sea level. We've seen massive changes in just a few years. Why are we finding it so difficult to believe? But everything else matches except for the height and the distance from the sea. It's in the right spot. It looks right. We've even got a King Atlas. I didn't even know this. We've got Atlas Mountains there. We've got absolutely everything saying this is the right thing. It's in the right spot. This is Atlantis. Go dig there. Prove me wrong. What's the worst that can happen if they dig it? They're proven right, they're proven wrong. What are they scared of? Just go out there, get some shovels and have a go. Do it properly, of course. But it's time. It's time to take that seriously. Tell whatever idiots are on Wikipedia trying to hide the truth that you've got to stop hiding this truth. And anybody else that's out there that's trying to prevent anyone from talking about it, stop it. This is a serious thing that can make a really big difference to our world. We need to stop just being in denial and just look at it and see what it has to offer, whatever it might be. It's not going to be some monster down there. There's not going to be something that's going to hurt us. If that was going to happen, that would have happened long ago. So it's just going to be a bunch of whatever's under there, maybe some temples, maybe some artifacts, whatever they're going to be. Let's have a look. All right. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.